All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We've got the NIA boys here, Trung Phan, Jack Butcher, and Bilal Zaidi. Just to kick it off straight away this week, we got Meme of the Week. We're going to start every episode with a meme probably. So this is one. Who wants to go for it? If you're listening to this and not watching the screen, this one had us rolling in the group chat. Go on, Jack or Trung, hit it, boys.
Jack, you posted it, bro. How did you find it? And tell me your visceral reaction. Explain the meme.
I don't know where I found it, man. I was just probably, just many clicks deep on an adventure through Twitter last night. But you've seen this guy before, Hasbullah.
Well, let's read it. Let's read it out first.
So the caption is motherfucker said I had a disability. Yeah, disability to get this bread.
the little kid with the stacks of money in his hand.
Yeah. It's incredible. A little kid. Okay, so for the listener, there's a little kid sitting in an airplane seat with just bricks of money, and the disability joke again. I don't want to kill the horse, but it's so fun. Jack sent it. I was literally laughing out loud. You know when you write LOL and like you never.
But you're not really.
LOLing? Yeah.
No, this one you're actually laughing out loud.
99% of the time I write LOL, my face is just straight, like a straight face. Yeah. There's no LOL. This one, Jack posted it, and it's this kid, and he just got these bricks. And so I checked the feed, and this guy Hasbullah just has about 20 tweets with this kid. I think he's like must be some rich influencer kid from Russia. But this meme, unbelievable, man. I'm going to use it. I have to use that line somewhere. Motherfuckers say I got a disability. Yeah, I got disability.
So dumb. All right, anyway.
This guy is like, we need to do our research on this guy, but this guy is like a meme sensation. Hasbullah, I think, Eastern European meme sensation. His the header of his Twitter profile, he's with Khabib.
Oh, the fighter?
Oh, yeah. UFC guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Killing it.
This guy's like real mega high profile, but man, I don't even know if this is, it says fan page. So maybe this is just his fan page, but man, huge.
300,000 likes. 300,000 likes.
It's very fitting this week, boys, because it's been a bit of a crazy, terrible week in the market. Everything's been red. The only thing we can do is laugh. So that's what we helping the listeners today. So boys, let's tell people what we're talking about today. This is going to be deep edge of the internet discussion. So we've got Moxie, the founder of Signal. He wrote this amazing blog post on kind of like a critique or summary of Web3, and we're going to break that down today. Also, Vitalik, the founder of Ethereum, he kind of wrote a response, and we're going to kind of have a discussion around that. And then let me scroll down here. We're also going to talk about LooksRare, which is an OpenSea competitor, which just launched. And they dropped a Looks airdrop. There was an airdrop that people could claim if they've, I think, transacted more than 3 ETH on OpenSea. So we're going to break down what they did there. It's quite interesting. And lastly, we're going to talk about Nas, the rapper who we've covered on the podcast before. He had an NFT drop on a platform called Royal. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then lastly, Paradigm and Sequoia investing in Citadel, just to cap it off. So boys, should we kick this off with Moxie? So let's paint a picture of who Moxie is and Signal, because I think a lot of people have heard of Signal, but I think it's important to just kind of share the background of what Signal is and why it's unique in the first place, because that's part of his critique. Trung, I think you were looking into this.
Yeah, I'll get into it. There's a really good New Yorker article about Moxie Marlinspike, which is his full name. That's not his actual government name, but that's the name he goes by. So I love saying government name, right?
Same.
So Moxie, Signal is a competitor to WhatsApp, a competitor to Telegram. It is but the key is this: Moxie created the end-to-end encryption. So end-to-end encryption basically means the only people that can see the message are the sender and the receiver. So if the government or a corporate entity tries to read what's being sent from one end to the other, all they see is gibberish. So he's a cryptographic genius, right? Like he's a legend in the cryptography space. Really close friends with Edward Snowden, who obviously exposed the NSA for their spying programs. So Moxie is very interesting because Signal, when WhatsApp was down or during the January 6th insurrection last year, people were concerned about using different communication apps. I mean, Signal spikes whenever there's a question around privacy, right? And he's a very underpaid CEO for what he does. So Signal is a nonprofit. He makes in the low hundreds of thousands a year. And actually, he just resigned as the CEO yesterday. And the interim CEO of Signal is Brian Acton, a former co-founder of WhatsApp. And what gets interesting with Acton is he left Facebook because Zuck had promised him when they made the deal in 2014 that WhatsApp would not do advertising. But listen, if you're dropping 19 billion, you're going to try to get some, you want some of that bread. You want to show disability.
Get disability. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, right? Like if you're spending 19 bill on WhatsApp, you're going to try to get some of that money back, son. And so he was so Brian Acton and Jan Koum, the co-founders, they've left Facebook. And Acton, so people criticize Acton because he's critical of Facebook, but he also got paid, right? And so he's like
your mouth a little bit.
Yeah,
people say
exactly, right?
Mouth, yeah.
So he's a big he was a big hashtag delete Facebook guy, but people are like, yo, you caked, you made $5 billion from Facebook, but he did actually leave Facebook and leave I think close to $1 billion in unvested equity. So he gets to play that card. Anyways, he started the foundation related to Signal, and he has been funding Signal out of his own pocket because Signal is a nonprofit. It depends on basically the largesse of the community donations and also these side deals that they won't talk about. But basically, they provide encryption technology to a lot of corporate players. But
so he's a cryptography legend, as you said. He knows about it well, and obviously crypto.
Yeah.
Which nowadays has been rebranded almost to
exactly.
Web3. A lot of the basis of that was cryptography. So he's not just some random dude, some think boy on Twitter. He's a legit dude.
Which is why this is why such a Elon just replied to this morning, right? He agreed. Jack Dorsey retweeted it and put a comment. Brian Armstrong, Balaji, and Vitalik all had to reply to it, right? Because this wasn't just some armchair quarterback. This is Mr. Cryptography being listen, I took a look under the hood and I'm telling you what I found, right?
He made a couple dApps. He made an NFT thing.
He made the dApps. Dude, I've been talking on this podcast with you guys for almost a year. I still haven't bought an NFT yet. This guy's out here making dApps and buying and creating his own NFT. So, Moxie, let's get into the nitty gritty of his paper. So it's called First Impressions with Web3. So let me rattle off kind of his main 3 top points, and I'd love to hear your guys' initial reaction to it. And then I think, Bilal, you're going to talk about the Vitalik response. Is that right?
Yeah. We can break it down.
So the very first thing that Moxie bullet points is, and to Bilal's initial point, he went through created dApps, created NFTs. He wanted to see what was under the hood. So his very first summary comment is, people are lazy, right? The average user, something we've talked about NIA, they want centralization. They just do. Not every single person wants to have a node on their cell phone. And this just human nature is what he found when he looked at the Web3 industry. And he spoke specifically to his NFT example. So he looked at the NFTs and he was curious to see how basically that NFT is being represented in his phone versus the websites for Rarible, which is an OpenSea competitor, and then OpenSea itself, which is a $13 billion NFT marketplace. So he's interacting with all these basically quote unquote centralized NFT players. And what he's seeing is that, so not only is the crypto community and Web3 moving towards kind of these central players and relying on these central players, which we've talked about, the actual mechanics of the NFTs themselves are also centralized. So you're basically doing API calls to 2 industry players. I don't know the names, maybe you guys do, but they're basically the ones that are telling you whether or not the blockchain information is accurate. You yourself can look, you, me, Jack, and Bilal, we could all go look ourselves, but a lot of people are just relying on these 2 industry players to tell you whether or not it's true. So not only are people kind of lazy, and which is totally fine, right? It's consumer behavior. The industry itself is also just kind of defaulting to a lot of these central choke points. So that was his point about NFTs, and the Web3 in general. He's like, he thinks that they are just naturally going to gravitate towards centralization for the consumer behavior angle. And I'm not saying whether or not.
Sorry, just to add one thing, the way he kind of described it, if I'm interpreting this correctly, is he said people don't want to run their own servers. That was kind of like a theme.
Yeah, that was the main point.
And again, like, you know, we all use websites every day. We use email. Like, we don't know what's going on behind the hood most of the time. And it's something we've talked to actually on the podcast a little bit before. Is just that people don't like I guess the open question is, how much do people care about this word decentralization? So we'll talk more about it after, but go for your other two points.
Well, you know what? I think we should keep the conversation. So I would love Jack's opinion on this first point. The other point he brought up about OpenSea, and he's not even saying like this is wrong. He's saying this is what I'm experiencing. And we've talked about it. It's like, it's so expensive to do these transactions, right? He's like, if OpenSea just went in the Web 2 model, they just kept a public record. It
would be a better experience.
It would literally be a more usable experience. But then he actually writes it too, right? He understands why. He's like, there wouldn't be this gusher of money into the industry if there wasn't this decentralized aspect of it, right? So it is important. And the last thing I'll wrap it up with because I know Jack is just like boiling as a volcano right here. He's got ideas. Is he basically said, I understand what the response is going to be. And that's ended up what happened. Vitalik more or less said, we understand that there's a chasm between what we say we want to create and what it will look like in its end state. We're trying to cross that chasm. So he basically predicts that this will be the Web3 response. And he says, well, my response to that is, this is Moxie's response. It looks like to me that this thing's just going to gravitate naturally towards centralization. Like, it's been almost a decade. And he's just looking at the mechanics of it. And he's like, it makes more sense to me in his initial view that this thing actually will just gravitate towards centralization because of Bilal's point there. It's like, people don't want to run servers on their phone. They just don't. And that's his position. So if there's a UX hack that will change all that, that will be the game changer. And I'm sure that's what Vitalik talked about. But Jack, hit us. Your thoughts.
Bilal, why don't you do Vitalik's response first? I think we have it all set up.
Yes, and then we can just discuss some of the main points. But I was just going to say, it sounded like he was like Eminem 8 Mile in it there. Like, he knows what people are going to respond. So he like preemptively says,
Bro,
you know, I do live in a trailer park. You know what I mean?
I do live in a trailer. Yo, Rabbit did do my girl. I don't care,
exactly.
Right?
He did shoot himself, you know. But anyway, no, I think that was a great summary. I'm just going to call out a couple things I'd highlighted as well. So he kind of starts off saying Web3 is ambiguous, which we've talked about before. People don't want to run their own servers. I think one thing he called out, which I thought was interesting, was protocols move much more slowly than platforms. Yeah. And the example he gives is email versus WhatsApp. He says email's been around for 30 plus years. Email is still unencrypted, whereas WhatsApp was able to do this in a few years.
Using his signal technology.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Yeah,
yeah, it's his technology.
Oh, amazing. And, you know, that is obviously a centralized company, you know, run by
Great
Facebook.
Point.
And he also calls out UI, like there's a lack of attention for UI. He was quite surprised that, you know, we're this many years in, there aren't great mobile interfaces, is something he called out as well. And so that was the only kind of other thing I want to call out. On Vitalik's rebuttal, I guess, if you want to call it that. Now, I'll preface this by saying the first screenshot he has, like, I don't understand half of what it is. I've read it a few times because there's a lot of like technical stuff, but the kind of summary I had was he kind of starts off by saying we're kind of in a missing middle, he said. So we currently have something that is centralized but easy and decentralized but hard, right? And he's saying then there's a need for something in between. It's kind of what I took from it. And his take is that the new tech that is being created and being worked on will get us to that point. He also kind of calls out the way Moxie talks about servers, and basically said the word server, in his opinion, is not very useful in a blockchain context. Then there's a whole bunch of examples he gives, which he says, this is how people can interact with a blockchain today. The first one being using a Binance or Coinbase, you know, like a centralized system. And then he rattles off 7 other examples, which we don't need to go into. And they're basically like technical differences. Like staking, like, whatever. So that was kind of the first part. And then his eventual point is to say it's still early, is kind of my take on it. And kind of what he had said that they were going to respond with is kind of what he said, right? And he's saying that right now there isn't that much cryptography happening, but what is going to happen in the coming years is very like cutting edge. And he calls out a lot of the stuff that's being worked on to achieve that. And then lastly, he kind of calls for what he thinks is a need for like a lighter chain, right? Because right now, like the critique of Ethereum specifically in the first post was like, it's too expensive. Like if for me to do this on OpenSea, you might as well just use a debit card and it would be a better experience. And what he's saying is, yeah, we know that. And that is why we're moving to proof of stake, which is, the big plan for Ethereum in the next, 6 months or so. And the last point I'll say is, which I actually think was quite an interesting take, which was general users don't really care necessarily what's under the hood, but developers do. And he said that people will follow what developers choose as their default most of the time. And I think that's quite an interesting point, because speaking to developers and speaking to, people building in the space, everything has been built primarily on Ethereum in this world. And now there's a few other blockchains that are becoming prominent as well. But if they can win over developers, then I think they're in a good place. So again, I think we can link to both of those in the description below. But that was kind of my take on it, which was we are early. There hasn't been enough investment until the last 5 years, he described, and now we're getting there. And a lot of the legwork is to be done, and we think we'll be able to move away from the current status quo. And there's no reason the status quo tomorrow needs to be what it is today. That was kind of how I took it. But you guys read it as well? Was there anything I missed out that you think is worth calling out?
That was great, man.
Cool. Yeah, and if you're listening to that and that didn't make that much sense, I would say just click the description and read what it says. Probably take you 5 minutes. But let's get on.
5 though, like 5 times you have to read it, so it's 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. Really. 25 minutes. Yeah.
The only thing I wanted to add was I loved your 8 Mile analogy. It's just Moxie goes in there, it's like, okay, cool. All right, well, you guys are gonna say XYZ. Let me respond to that right now. But anyways, man, that's I love that. That was great. But man.
So you guys have read it. I think we don't have time to go through every single response from Brian Armstrong and everyone else, but I think these two are the two main ones.
Yeah.
I'll just say my personal take. I think what Moxie wrote was pretty good, and I think it was pretty fair. It was like pretty fair criticism for a lot of the things we've discussed on the podcast. Like we did a whole episode on inflection points of Web3, and some of these things are things we discussed. But I don't know. What do you guys think, Jack? I know you've been obviously heavily working in the space, creating NFTs, doing all that sort of stuff. Like, what did you think when you saw this?
I agree. Like, if you're trying to critique it through the lens of like a software developer that's like shipping tools for people, like billions of users, like I think that perspective is completely valid. Like this is not the infrastructure that we can build the tools that we currently use on top of today. Like that's completely fair and true. And I think the other side of it is like, there's totally fair criticism coming in response to like, this is a solution for everything in like some of the narratives that have been perpetuated for the last, like, I don't know, year at this point. And I think a lot of crypto's growth, a lot of NFTs growth, it hasn't come from, I don't know. I think the strongest arguments for like on the crypto side, sound money, all of the like principles that like maybe a Jack Dorsey would stand behind are more to do with solving problems that the three of us on this call do not experience on a daily basis, right? Like,
yeah,
unbanked people, currency manipulated into like the quadrillions of decimal points and that idea of like trying to look at like OpenSea and see why it's like a logical product. It's like, it's not, right? It's just a complete like JPEG casino, people messing about. Like that's what it is. Like, and I think some of these critiques, while someone like uber qualified to build tools can come and say, yeah, you can't build Signal on top of this tomorrow, it would be too expensive. Very fair. But also like, there's just something interesting about the fact that people feel the need to respond to it, right? Or like feel like it's gotten big enough where it's like, I have to have an opinion on it. Where, I mean, maybe it was largely just like skating underneath the focus of people like this for a long time because it wasn't in the culture in the same way it is now. And I'm personally like, you read some of the stuff and you're like, this is, you know, it's really hard to figure out like the kind of the builders from the like the LARPers or the speculators or the whoever else. And there's nothing wrong with either of those two things. I think what's wrong is like saying one thing and doing another, right?
Yeah, like conflating and I think we talked a little bit about this in the Jack Dorsey episode, like conflating the two and then also kind of like the moral high ground, we're saving the world stuff, and then combining that all into one big thing, I think can become a little annoying for people. And like he actually, in the original post, he kind of ends it near the end talking about what is driving this gold rush. And his take was a lot of this is because of speculation, which again, I don't think he's necessarily saying is a bad thing, but I think we all probably agree with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Of course, NFTs, of course, right? Like, there's a difference between just pure speculation versus seeing some utility value being created, real use cases, and then speculation on top of that. And I think we've obviously got a bit of both in this case.
Yeah, I think there's like financial speculation and there's technical speculation too, right? It's like we're building this thing, technology will come out of it. Right now, it's a bunch of people that like bought Ethereum in 2014 that are selling each other pictures of ducks or whatever it is. Like maybe there's some useful use case comes out of that. Maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, then the market made its decision and we'll move on and go back to building whatever else we were doing. Like his point about like, it would be easier to implement OpenSea as a debit card transaction. It might be easy to build, but nobody would use it, right? It's like the incentives are just in a different order.
Well, he acknowledges that, right? I think
for sure. I'm not disagreeing with anything he said. It's just the notion that like product market fit comes from the fact that there are 100,000 people that want to mess about and do this all day. And I think like the idea, like the conflation between like my like activity on OpenSea is like, you know, some like moral service that I'm providing to the universe and driving humanity into like the direction I want it to. I just don't think that that's like,
that's not the point of it, right? That's
more honest about their involvement, everyone would be a little bit better off, perhaps.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add. I think Jack nailed it. Is like, it's just not the right lens to be looking at it from. I don't think that's what Moxie was doing, right? So to clarify, it's like if you haven't read the piece yet, it's a very sober, like objectively written piece, right? He's like, he's not throwing stones. He's like, here's my experience. This are the conclusions I've drawn from it. And as Jack pointed out, it's like, you know, the thing that Jack pointed out where, you know, the whole point is that it is a bit of a JPEG casino. That's what the gold rush is about. Is like Moxie fully recognizes that. And I think, I got to pull the line, but it's like, he almost necessarily kind of agrees with what you said, Jack. It's like, you know, this is where the money is going to come from. This is where the excitement to fund all this development is going to come from. And I think his perception of it should not be taken necessarily as a criticism. It really just is a blow by blow of him saying, this is my experience with it. And this is the conclusion I'm drawing. And you know, people are taking a lot of it to be like, he's being critical of it. And both sides get to use this as a, like, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, he's dunking on Web3, right? Like, oh my God, Web3 is murdered. It's like, well,
that's just Jack, the YouTube title for this video.
Web3 is murdered. It's just
with
like
the thumbnail.
Jack already did the face. But no, is this the end of Web3? And that's just not the purpose of what he did, right? So everybody's going to take what he wrote, which is literally just a techie dude, one of the most qualified cryptographic techie dudes in the world, talk about his experience. And then the last thing I wanted to add was the funny thing he did, which is amazing. I'll share my screen. I mean, you guys obviously saw this. If Bilal, can you do a screen share for me?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just add you.
So the thing I'll be sharing for the listeners is Moxie did something really cool. Is he made an NFT that looks different based on where it's listed, which marketplace it's listed on, and his own wallet, because he's trying to demonstrate that these are still using very Web 2 technologies. So the TLDR is basically he can set the NFT to point to whichever server he wants, and it serves up a different image. So if Bilal can share the screen here, if it's jagging, it's not the end of the world. Okay, here we go. So basically Moxie created an NFT and it looks different because, again, this is like what an NFT actually is. It's not actually on the blockchain, right? It's a URL pointing towards somewhere on the blockchain. So you can actually fiddle around and have the servers send you different images or show you different images. So for the viewers and then for the listeners, on the left here, he has a picture that you see on OpenSea. It's like this green clock-looking thing. Kind of looks like a Jack Butcher piece, actually. The one in the middle time is an NFT for Rarible. So now it's a blue circle. It's a circle on a blue background. And then the NFT in his wallet is literally just a poo emoji. And his conclusion is, based on the mechanics of how NFTs are, again, they're just like URLs pointing to places on the blockchain, is like any NFT can end up looking like a poo emoji in your wallet, right? Which is hilarious. And again, he's not being critical. He's like, this is what I did, and this is how it came out. I thought that was a very apt demonstration. And again, people are like, oh, Web3 is murdered. Oh my God. In one of our first episodes, you had talked about your famous verified NFT. Like you said, NFTs explained, and it was just a photo and then a photo with the verification tag. And you said that was like capturing the moment in history, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why you were able to sell the NFT for a very large sum of money. How much will Moxie's NFTs sell for if he ever sells them, based on the amount of hype that he created? And again, this guy's not about the cheddar. He could be way richer if he wanted to, but how much would that NFT sell for if you were to estimate?
I think a good amount. I think those days of like pure like mega mania are maybe coming to a close, but like I think there's enough people that would try and prove a point. Like
the Web 2 haters, like a Ken Griffin. Ken Griffin will buy it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think there's an interesting it's probably like an interesting bidding war that would happen between the two sides, because I think he's uniquely positioned in that like it's not a commercial venture at all for him. But I think it could be a fair.
That's a seven. It's a seven-figure NFT. It's a seven-figure NFT.
I would think so. Just like it's like marks a very poignant moment in the debate. I'm also like, this is where like marketing terms like do us a disservice in a lot of ways. We always come back to this point. It's like, what exactly are we talking about, and what encompasses what? What does Web3 refer to? What does it mean? And one of the things I was thinking about while you guys were explaining it is the OpenSea example. Like if that was a debit card, let's say, I think what's at least getting people to think about new things to build is yes, there are gas fees and it's an expensive network to use, but it is a very different dynamic than depositing money in and out of bank accounts, right? Yeah. It's very different than having like a Stripe merchant on your like attached to your business, where you have to have a certain amount of capital and there are clearing times, and like it really does change the way you would think about constructing a project. Like and that's the nuance, I think, that once you've spent a little bit more time in that world, it changes things. Like, and maybe there are ways to do that with fiat. Like, maybe you can like custody money and like hold it on behalf of someone and float them and advance and all of these different things. But I think the like crux of it is if you can create these way less like these systems that move money around in a less without friction, and I don't mean without cost, I mean without friction. So like if I can send money to you, even if it costs me $50, it's in a wallet, you can spend it instantly, you can send it to any address on earth, and it's going to be there in 45 seconds for that next person to move it or, you know, do whatever they want with it. That doesn't exist in like a fiat system, right? So the ability to even like conceptualize products and ideas and tools around that idea, I think is what the people who are excited about and are advocating for Web3 are like, I think inspired by, I hope inspired by, but a lot of it ends up as like, hey, let's sell an NFT for a restaurant membership. It's like, why the fuck do we need to do that? You know, like that's not necessary. But with like digital art, I think it is like a unique application for it where you want exposure to somebody's work in a way that has, you know, not been possible before. Like it's normalized the higher sale price of digital art, which whether you like it or not, that is a feature of this system, right? The idea that you're paired with this technology, digital artists are now competing with some of the highest paid traditional artists in history. And this like mechanism has made that possible because the people who made their money, who made internet money through like their very, very close attachment to internet culture, want to like patronize artists that are internet native. So I think a lot of this is like way more of a philosophical debate than it is a technical debate, and the way it changes people's minds around what they want to support, how they want to spend money, with all the way in which our daily lives have changed even in the last couple of years. Like, what do you do for entertainment? And we know like sports gambling and whatever, not to make it purely about that angle, but it has facilitated this new way for people to interact with one another, interact with things. And I think you can rip it to bits as like, you know, technically it would be, you could work faster or you could build an alternative that isn't quite the same. But I think it's like a much longer arc for this stuff to play out than I think people give it credit for. And it's a really, really huge amount of like social deprogramming around the idea of even like digital objects having value, right? That's something that people just largely, let's pull up the quote tweets of the Reese Witherspoon recent tweet.
Wait. What did she say? What did she say?
She said something like, it's pretty
VC's
funny.
on Web3.
The way she worded
their incentives are different than yours.
She should have written that probably, but she said, where did I put it? I thought I sent it to you boys. Hang on.
Unless she was forced to delete it. I did see your link, but the tweet didn't show
I saw that. Yeah, she's trending right now, so it's quite funny.
Wait, did she delete it?
No, I don't think so. But she basically said like, hey, everybody's going to have a digital identity in the future, digital avatars, blah, blah, blah. Are you planning for it? It was like a funny last sentence on the tweet. Are you planning for this?
So I'm just going to read. It says, in the near future, every person will have a parallel digital identity. Avatars, crypto wallets, digital goods will be the norm. Are you planning for this? And the quote tweets on this are pretty hilarious.
Savage.
Like, there's a lot of people like, this is evil. What the hell does this even mean? Like, stuff like that. But then there's also obviously like the memesters. Like, Kobe's in here right now. See that? Kobe Reese, please.
Yo, this is savage. Ashley Vance wrote, someone is laying the groundwork for Legally Blonde 3.
Oh, good. That's good.
Oh my goodness. Good. Man, she's angling herself, right? She's taking the other side of the Dorsey trade.
Yeah, but you know what?
She must be dropping a collection.
Exactly.
Too, no?
She changed the LPFP last week to an NFT.
Oh my god! This is what you talked about, man. This is like, hey man, cool. You get free bread at the restaurant. It's like, come on, this is not what we were here for.
Yeah, I think like that's maybe where people are getting like frustrated with it now. It's like banging into pop culture. Before it was just like nerds, you know, messing around, and now it's like hitting financial markets, and like your favorite celebrity is tweeting about it, and Matt Damon's doing his like, you remember that
crypto.com.
went crazy the last couple
oh my goodness
weeks. So I think a lot of people have good intentions as well, criticizing it. It's like, this is really an underdeveloped technology, and like telling retail investors just ape their like life savings into it, it's probably not the best. Like, if you're coming into contact with this the first time through like a Matt Damon commercial, it kind of gives an illusion that it's more developed than it actually is, right? Or it's more of a, you know,
man, if Jason Bourne is using this technology, it must be very secure. Wait, Jack, the one thing I wanted to add to your point was a lot of the energy going into it. It's a longer term thing, and there will be a payout, presumably. I think the broadband telecom bubble that coincided with the .com bubble is a very good example, right? I think telecoms raised close to $1 trillion, laying literally just a fiber for broadband internet. And I mean, a lot of it went to shit. A lot of it went to shit for non-technical reasons, like accounting fraud. People were basically pretending that these capital investments they're making, digging out the ground and putting in wires, was to be treated differently. So it made the company look better. So that kind of your point is like, take away from, okay, what is the technical issues with laying broadband versus what are the other kind of social, financial, and social agreements around doing it. So the broadband has obviously paid off, right? It took 20 years and a lot of accounting scandals during that time, but those aren't necessarily related. They're related in separate ways, but the technology itself can still work. It can still be developed. And, we're going to see a lot of bullshit with Web3. We have seen it, but in 20 years, are we going to look back at it like how we look at WorldCom, which is the largest accounting scandal ever? They were involved in the telecom industry. Are we going to look back at that and be, oh, that was kind of messed up. WorldCom, big accounting scandal, bigger than Enron. But, we also have broadband, right? Like, that's kind of like, I think
that's a pretty good comparison. Like. And the only thing I was going to add, boys, is that I think to build on what Jack said earlier, I think the reason people have been excited by it, the reason Andreessen Horowitz had just raised another huge, fund, and a big part of that is going to be invested in this world. There's obviously some real stuff being built, right? And I think everything he said in the blog post is completely fair. And I think it was really fair criticism, if you can even call it that. It was just observations. But at the same time, I think it comes back to kind of like what Jack said there, like what's unique. Like when someone's building something, the stuff that got me excited, as we've talked a little bit about in past episodes, is stuff where I could just see straight away the benefit. Like whether it's the DeFi and we're taking a bigger slice of the pie that previously went to a centralized entity and building something that is more lean to be peer-to-peer, which is quite a straightforward use case. There's other use cases which you see can only be created because of the ability to add programming to money, essentially, right? So like you've something like an Alchemex, which is repaying, loans that repay themselves, which sounds like a scam until you kind of look at it and you're like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense once you get into it a little bit. And also like these newer protocols where people are designing them beyond the technical side is really designing them for how humans are going to interact with them, the psychology of it all, the game theory of it all, and being able to say, well, in the real world, in the physical world, we've got a monetary system that does X, and we can change interest rates every few months, et cetera, and instead with this we can create something that is dynamic and is being updated every 5 seconds, right? So to me, that is where those use cases become interesting. But as kind of Vitalik even said in the last part of his post, these are just, a lot of these are ideas, and the market will kind of decide, right? Like, do people like it or not? And he was the one who even said that himself. Like, we will see. Like, he's not saying everything's going to be taken over. And I think that was quite a fair way for him to do it, to kind of wrap it up.
I agree. I think, like, the barrier is more, as with anything, is more about, like, a social adoption than, like, how fast technology can move. And NFTs, I would say, I think there's a Suzu tweet about it. Like, they're the first like social phenomenon network effect that I think just unlocks a completely different, in the same way that like Facebook figuring out the distribution, like via elite college campuses was like a massive, massive catalyst for the explosion of social networks. This feels like, and Facebook is not I think, again, it just gets into a philosophical debate. It's like, what is utility to who? Like, it's all relative.
And it's not just one, it's not like one thing for everyone. People want different things. Like, there's going to be the hardcore developer who wants to run his own node, but for majority of people, they're going to want a Coinbase to log in with their face. And if their money is growing, they're going to be happy enough with that. So I kind of agree with like his point, but I also kind of disagree with in that I don't think that's necessarily a problem. And I think the word decentralization is kind of the issue here. It's like too broad a term. And it, like, for something to be better than it is today by it being decentralized, that doesn't mean it has to be 100% decentralized and everyone's running it in their back, their back garden with a node, like a server in the back. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's going to be a spectrum of solutions that kind of like are developed.
Well, yeah.
But go on.
Sorry, Bilal, you finish your thought.
No, that was good. No, that was it.
I was just going to say, like we talked about in the last episode, I'm doing a like mortgage application right now, right? And the information I provide these people is like the most analog, crazy, like there's no authentication. It's completely based
Fiat
on
application.
Completely
process.
Based on trust, right? It's like, send us proof of this, proof of this, proof of this, which, under penalty of perjury, I've told them the truth here. But the idea that like you could say, connect like my financial history to this thing that is universally like readable, and there's a history of transactions and the balance has been cataloged for X amount of time. I'm not saying that that's not something that we can accomplish without a blockchain, but there's like reason to believe that there's a better way to do it than it's currently done, right? And interoperability, maybe this entire experiment ends up in a completely different application that leverages the best learnings from each world. But I guess the problem I have with most of the commentary is just like people who are critical thinkers, it's like, why do you think you have figured out what the definition of this thing is? And why does somebody group certain subjects under a marketing term that somebody else invented, right? It's just like, if you really get down to it, it's like, if the market doesn't want it, nobody's going to put any money into it and it will die.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's not happening. That is the opposite is happening.
The opposite is happening right now. There are literally hundreds dollar bills just lying around left, right, and center. Fiat fan is blind. I'm just blind, looking, can't find anything. Everybody else is just patting their pockets.
Yeah, not to go 2-0 hedge on it, but like we've talked about this across all of our episodes. But like there are like illusions that people have believed in for a long time that are breaking, right? Like anybody that's not examined money in any serious way has really no idea how it works. And even the people who spend all day trying to figure it out still don't know how it works. And now you've got like these people popping up like, oh, we've come up with a new idea and we've invented a new money. And now we've got, $200 million of liquidity trading on it on a daily basis. That's like, it just feels like an idea that's not going to die. And there's going to be a lot of people taking advantage of that dynamic. And there's very few people that are like, very few people that are like have the patience and the discipline to like build the longer term infrastructural stuff that is like really gonna, I don't know, offer utility, I suppose, is the relative utility to like a wider group of people, because utility, selling JPEGs back and forth, that's utility to somebody.
But isn't it, Jack? That's a good point. And I was thinking about this recently with the recent drops in all the markets, right? Like to be, I think we were talking about this a little bit over in the DMs or something. Like over the last year, I'm just going to share how my brain has been working. I'm sure many people listening to this have had a similar like thought process. Like when everything is just going up so much, and if that in proportion to your overall income, your general wealth, whatever you want to call it, is a significant percentage or a significant amount, it starts to really devalue the other things you're doing. And I don't know if I'm articulating that properly, but what I mean by that is if something goes up so much by me not doing anything, it is actually quite a bad thing in a way, because it starts distorting your perception.
Why do I have to work? Why do I need to build? Why do I have to put my nose in, find product market fit?
Exactly. So exactly what Jack was just saying there about those people building infrastructure layer, all that stuff. Like if they're looking over there and people are speculating and are making like 10 times the amount of money, not that money is the only thing that motivates them, but in a lot of cases, that's obviously a contributing factor. There needs to be a balance, right? And like maybe a little correction right now isn't the worst thing in the world if it means it kind of shakes out like the edges where people are just purely speculating, rugging people left, right, and center. And even just again, like being honest here, like in the last few weeks, like a lot of people, you look at your numbers in your accounts or whatever you're using to keep a track of things, and you're like, damn, this is terrible, right?
They're clapping in.
And in a way, it kind of gives you a little kick, and you're like, oh man, I need to go keep doing what I need to do, or like building something. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I'll be honest with you, man. That's literally what I was thinking last 2 weeks. I'm like, damn, I gotta have to build some shit. Like, this is not taking me to the promised land. Yeah. And if it is, I'm gonna have to wait. But like, get back on the grind. So I know we're just gonna talk about CZ at the end, but I think you guys brought up such a great point. I think there's this. Let's just call it what it is, right? There's a bit of envy. There's a bit of frustration of watching. So Bloomberg just released an estimate for Changpeng Zhao, commonly known as CZ in the crypto community. He is the founder and CEO of Binance, which is the largest crypto exchange in the world by a factor of like 4 or 5, right? I think they do more volume than Coinbase, FTX, BitMEX combined. Massive.
Yeah.
But also massively unregulated, right? That's part of the argument around Binance and you know what CZ's been able to accomplish. But they estimate he's worth $96 billion. And the meme that runs around is he used to work at Bloomberg. Michael Bloomberg, who built one of the greatest financial products ever, the Bloomberg Terminal, which just feeds you information about the markets, is worth like, I think $20 billion, $30 billion. So CZ, within the last 5 years, Binance is 5 years old, is worth almost $100 billion, right? It's unfathomable. And I think we're going to talk about, we just mentioned it now, is Paradigm, which is a big crypto fund, and Sequoia, one of the top Silicon Valley funds in the world. Their former actually partner, Matt Huang, used to work at Sequoia. He's also now at Paradigm. They invested in Citadel Securities, which does derivatives, futures, options contracts, founded by Ken Griffin. But that's a huge sea change, right? It's like you're going to have this old, like the new monies is investing in the old money. That's pretty crazy.
Why? What like the speculation is that like, does that have anything to do with the fact that they're like overexposed or?
I think, Matt Levine, who we've talked about a lot here, just his perception was, a guy like Ken Griffin's like, oh, you guys are doing trading and CZ is worth $100 billion. Sam Bankman-Fried's worth $20 billion. I'm sitting here, I'm only worth $20 billion. Like Ken Griffin's like, I'm only worth $20 billion. These guys are having all the fun. I think that's what Matt Levine's like. Hey, listen, we have everything in place. We can handle high volumes of trades. We can build derivative products. We can service institutionals. Why aren't we getting involved in crypto? That's as simple as that, right? It's like, there's a gusher of money. Citadel Security is uniquely qualified to do the job of moving digits around and building financial products. So that's when Matt Levine's position.
But the idea of, like, this is just to sort of signify their partnership, like, or is there like?
I think they're going to start doing crypto products.
Right.
And they need. I mean, why wouldn't they? If Paradigm, if they're letting Paradigm, which is now the largest crypto fund, invest in just the oldest of old money, market makers, right? Citadel Securities. If they're not doing crypto products, I will eat a sock. If Citadel Securities is not doing crypto products in a year from now, I would just be completely in shock.
Yeah. And who's the market for that on their side? Like they're gonna.
I bet, and they're going after institutionals. That would make sense, right? They're going after. I mean, if you're Citadel Securities now, this is the first time they've taken outside money. The first time ever. You're taking it from a crypto company. You're taking it from Matt Huang and Paradigm. That is this. What more of a message are you sending to the world? Like what other message could you possibly be sending?
And they at Paradigm and Sequoia, like they're basically buying distribution into like institutional books, right?
Yeah, it makes total sense, right? So everybody wins. Everybody wins in this arrangement. So Joe Weisenthal, the Bloomberg reporter, another Bloomberg reporter, actually his headline was like, this is the perfect investment for Paradigm. Like it just makes all parties involved. It makes all sense in the world if we extrapolate where crypto markets are headed. Because I mean, so FTX and Binance, we just talked about CZ, they make most of their money on derivative trades, not even the underlying, right? Because derivatives markets naturally can always be a multiple of the underlying asset, because you can create all these type of derivative products, right? You can do anything. It's a derivative. That's literally the word. It's a derivative underlying product. I think Sam Bankman-Fried said in the Invest Like the Best podcast that it's a 10-to-1 like a heuristic. Whatever the underlying market is, you can do 10 times that in derivatives. Like that is like the standard. So like if you are Citadel Securities and you literally just do derivatives all day, you have the infrastructure, the employees, and the know-how to create derivative products.
Has there been anything like this before? Do you think, Trung, in like these two worlds coming together
unheard
at this scale?
Dude, I don't
think so, right?
Having a crypto fund invest in the old school market maker, like an exchange, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, mad. All right, well, boys, I think we can move on to the next one now if we want, just to wrap it up. We're going to talk a little bit about NFTs. I'll just mention one thing before we talk about the new OpenSea competitor called LooksRare. Nas, the rapper, investor, someone we did basically a whole episode on him, if you're interested, how he transitioned from just a musician to an investor, and he's had some amazing wins. And he's kind of been tiptoeing around this world. Wasn't he an investor in Coinbase, actually?
Yeah.
He was, right? So he's already been involved with this world for a little bit of time, actually. But he was partnering with Royal, which is a new platform. I think it's royal.io. When I was reading this, I kept reading as Royale because I just watched Pulp Fiction. And I was thinking of Royale with cheese. Yeah, exactly. But essentially, he was they're offering streaming royalty rights for 2 of his songs. So he just had a new album come out. And it looks like, to me, this is kind of a first of its kind, in a way, using actually NFT technology. Like Royal is a new platform. I think the founder is Bilal, like the 3LAU, the DJ, and a few other people that have come from the crypto world as well. Or like one of the guys I know, he's moved from Andreessen Horowitz there. So this is quite interesting. I tried logging on this morning to buy it, and it was the website was crashed. So it was so much demand, it crashed the site. I'm assuming everything's already sold out. But I just mentioned that because we did talk about this kind of idea in the past about people being able to buy and support musicians and being able to use NFTs to do that. On the flip side, I will say that has been some criticism. Some people are saying you can do this already. You can go and buy like the rights for this already on auction sites and stuff like that, which I didn't actually know. But I think for me, the thing is when you bring it into this world, there's just a lot more you can do with it. And you're also bringing the liquidity and a kind of gaming dynamic that we've all been playing around with in this world. So just something to have on your radar. I think it's quite interesting. But that ties us perfectly into the last thing, which is a new OpenSea competitor. This is just really happened in the last day or two. That's been really popping off. I know they've been working on this for some time. I saw it on Twitter this morning because there was a Looks airdrop where you could claim tokens, which which we've seen examples of in the last few months of ENS. We talked about in the podcast as well. So Jack, I know you were kind of looking at this a little bit. So do you have an idea like what is the background on this? And I think you had some you thought it was quite an interesting approach.
Yeah, I don't know much about the team that built it, but like in the NFT community, we talked about this a couple episodes ago. OpenSea has kind of had this like very tumultuous relationship with its community. There were the insider trading things. We talked about that. There were the like we're going to IPO, or there's speculation that we're going to IPO. They hired a CFO from, was it Airbnb or somewhere?
Lyft.
So OpenSea has kind of diverged from the native Web3 narrative, right? They've definitely, and this ties into what we spoke about in the first segment of this episode, is like it's more akin to a Web 2 company structure and ethos, but just, you know, the financial component of it happens on
They went
Ethereum,
Hollywood.
Polygon.
They went Hollywood.
Exactly. Exactly. So this LooksRare competitor to OpenSea is essentially, I think, a response to the way in which the community has criticized OpenSea, right? It's like they're taking a 2.5% rake on every transaction, and that goes on their balance sheet, right? There are, you know, services like ENS that have kicked back some of the revenue they've made to the users that supported the protocol. OpenSea is not doing that. So this LooksRare platform launched with that baked in. So again, I don't claim to know exactly how the intricacies of the tokenomics work, but they're taking the royalty payments from the transactions. It's a 2% fee, and that goes back into paying the users of the platform via this Looks token, right? So
yeah,
in an OpenSea, when you're doing $1 billion of volume a month, what's that? $2 million goes back to your community, or is it 20 million? Sorry. So it works the exact same way as OpenSea, where you could buy and trade any NFT on there, and they're also like building some interesting new features. I think maybe they're a little bit more nimble of a team, and there are little tweaks in there that I think are more native features for the NFT community. So you can make a blanket offer on an entire collection.
Yeah.
And that will, like, that's going to push out to every owner of a piece in that collection.
Yeah, that's a really nice feature, actually.
Little things that like crypto and NFT native people have been thinking about. Not to say that OpenSea don't do a lot of research and are figuring this stuff out too, and also like supporting a ridiculous amount of traffic and transaction volume in the process. They definitely have the network effect, but from what I saw over the last couple of days on Twitter, there are some of like the bigger voices in the NFT space are definitely getting behind the idea of LooksRare as the de facto platform for trading NFTs. I think there's also, I should probably check this before I say it, but I read on Twitter, not on their site, that there was no pre-mine, or like there's no distribution of tokens to the team. So this is not something that, you know, there's a 24-hour rug pull situation.
They didn't want Jack Dorsey coming after them. They're like, we're going to do this right. Like, yo, we don't want Jack Dorsey on the radar here.
Yeah, you know, it's like, what's interesting about it is like there is still like perverse incentives with the token, because like if you're rewarding volume, then maybe you're encouraging like, yeah, exactly. You're encouraging transactions that wouldn't have otherwise happened. But again, like an interesting response, and like that's the other thing that's really a nascent and narrowly understood phenomenon, is like you can build a product on top of this data set that already exists, right? You can't fork Facebook and build a new UI for Facebook, but you can take all of the data that OpenSea is using to build their marketplace and make your own. And I think
it's amazing.
Again, that's like another thing that maybe it was in that piece before, but these things are like really NFTs, ironically, as like ridiculously stupid they look from the outside to a lot of people. It's like it really has made this stuff tangible for so many people.
Yeah, it's like given it's given like something to actually build around, even if it's just like speculative JPEGs, right? But like that could easily be like something else
real
of value.
Estate. It's going to be real estate.
I was about
right?
to say houses, exactly. But and I was just gonna add, Jack, like I played around with it this when you shared it in a group chat earlier, and I, within like 5 minutes I connected my wallet, it pulled in all my NFTs from, it's not actually, I think of it as being on OpenSea, but it's really on my wallet address, right?
Wallet, yeah.
Well, it's really a URL pointing at a place.
Exactly.
To the blockchain. Let's
depending on the
Moxie.
NFT, you can't make blanket statements like that. Lava Lads 100% on chain. CryptoPunks 100% on chain.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
So they'll exist until Ethereum ceases to exist. So there are, there are exceptions to the blanket statements.
Hold on a second. I just want to add a couple of things with OpenSea which we haven't covered yet. They just raised $300 million at a $13 billion valuation.
Yeah, crazy.
So just for listeners, anybody that missed that news, they did I think 20 million in volume in 2020. Last year, they did 14 billion in volume. So they a 700 times increase. And they get 2.5% of every transaction. 2.5%. And then already this year, I think they're at 2 billion this month. So like they're on pace for tripling or quadrupling what they're doing. So let's say they do 50 billion NFTs this year. 2.5%, that's 10. Oh. It's a lot of money, people.
Public math.
I think a bill. I think they're gonna make a bill in revenue, and then you do if you put like a SaaS multiple. No, you probably want to put a Visa type multiple on that. Yeah, maybe call it 20. It's a $20-30 billion company easily. The last point I wanted to add was 2 points actually, because we talked about it in group chats. Is the Jack, to your point of it looks silly to the outside. It's the Chris Dixon line, right? A lot of things start out looking like toys. Like eBay was with Beanie Babies. That's how it started. And then people are like, oh, you can create a marketplace on the internet, right? And then you start solving all the problems that's related to that. Like, how do you trust the other side? How does eBay become intermediary? How do you trust payments? So like all those things get baked on top of what is really a game, right? It's a trading game with Beanie Babies. And the other thing that you put in the chat, Jack, I love to talk about it actually, is the idea of Cobra effect. So the Cobra effect is named after, it was during British rule of India. The colonial officers basically went to a part of India and said, hey, we want to get rid of cobras. We have a cobra problem. So if you bring us cobras, we'll give you money. So what it ended up happening, I don't know if this is apocryphal or how accurate it is, but it's called the Cobra effect, is the locals started breeding cobras so they could kill them and bring them to the officers and get paid. And like now, anytime that there's an incentive built and it creates a wrong outcome, it's called the Cobra effect. Before I hand it off to Jack about why LooksRare might have a bad incentive, my favorite example of the Cobra effect is Domino's Pizza. They're like, you guys remember this? If we don't deliver you your pizza in 30 minutes, like you get it for free.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens for those drivers? They're going to rush to the house and there's going to be some car crashes. So there's a case early 90s. I think it was DC. A Domino's driver or the victim of a car crash related to Domino's. I think they were sued for $150 million, something crazy, maybe 90 million. Either way, they paid a lot of money and had to end the program. Perverse incentives. So Jack, LooksRare, no car crashes will happen, but why is the incentive perverse?
So if you're rewarding people for the volume of assets they trade, and you're not doing like this is a permissionless market, right? So I could have 2 Ethereum addresses and I could trade assets between those addresses. I'm going to pay gas on those transactions, but maybe there's some arbitrage there where if I'm doing and I don't know the percentages, but if I'm doing a certain amount of volume, then I'm essentially like generating free yield, or I'm generating yield somehow. And the reason I came across it as I have a couple bots set up for certain collections on Twitter, and I'm seeing stuff this morning like the same asset is trading back and forth, and the price goes up and up and up and up and up. CryptoPunks, we talked about it the other week. There was one just going back and forth this morning, and I was like, wow, that's like 100 times what those things normally go for. And it turns out like somebody's trying to game the system here. I'm almost certain that the guys that built this are smart enough to like have thought through this problem, because the literature is pretty sophisticated around this platform. But maybe like maybe there's something written to avoid that. Maybe if it's like a single asset, like you only get it on a single transaction, or it's proximate to the value of the collection. I don't know. I'm sure they're smart enough to solve around it. But I think there's 3 different mechanics for rewards. Bilal, did you see that? One is like you stake the Looks token. The other is you can provide liquidity to a like Looks pool on Uniswap. And then there's another one I can't remember, but I think you earn Ethereum yield by staking Looks token, and right now it's like what 700% APY.
Yeah, I did it this morning.
Yeah, I was literally about to say, yo, Bilal saw yield, just spent 4 hours this morning. Said, yo, how do I get that yield, son? I got disability.
Ready.
I don't got a disability. I got disability.
And do you know what? I genuinely, because I didn't get that much like in the tokens, because I haven't spent that much money on OpenSea, so it was like probably like $500 worth of Looks tokens at the price of today, and the gas fee alone was probably like over $100, right, to do all this stuff, right? But I was like, all right, I'm kind of learning. We're doing a podcast on it, whatever. If I lose it, like whatever. But
you ain't losing nothing, son. You got disability.
Disability for the staking. No, but then I was calculating. I was like, okay, this probably isn't even going to make money given the fees. But you got to be in the game. Anytime there's an option, you got to be in there. It's just our principle. You got to do it. You know what I mean?
Man. You got to be in there for the start. And there's a few, we should share them in the group. There's a few like people that have written like what, 15 tweets about their decision to commit like 500 grand to this token.
I'll share one in the description. We won't read all of them. It's a Mooncat2878. Incredible name, first of all. Putting a significant amount of money, but they call out a lot of the differences. There's like a comparison, like for example, OpenSea has 2.5% fees, LooksRare is 2% on basic sales, 0 on private sales versus OpenSea. Then they kind of talk about the tokenomics. And one thing I will share, let me pull this up here, which is the allocation. I'm just going to share my screen so people can see the visual as well. So you can see here the tokenomics of the allocation. So 75% to community, 12%, and within that, the breakdown is 12% airdrop, 18.9% staking rewards, 44.1% trading rewards. So I think those were the two.
They literally just took the criticisms and just flipped it, right? Very smart. I mean, brilliant positioning.
Which is kind of a great example or argument. Yeah, 8 Mile, but also just an argument for, like there's direct competition being made because it was so easy to fork and basically create a platform like this. I mean, I'm sure it was still not simple in terms of like setting it all up, but yeah, really, I mean, this is like capitalism, like people can put something out if people like it.
Listen, if you got disability, you're going to get paid.
You're going to get that airdrop, son. You know what I mean?
Well, like, let's talk about the last thing with the OpenSea guys that we didn't mention, they're the first NFT billionaires. They're worth 2.2 each, the co-founders. So there you go. They flexed disability for the last 4 years, man.
You don't know how much Jack's stashing. I wouldn't be saying the first easily.
Definitely the first. They're definitely the first.
Got a few lava lads set up.
Yeah. Clicks to bricks like this mansion, son.
Anyway, so I think that was worth calling out. I mean, again, I haven't done that much due diligence on this. I just literally read the thread today. I don't know who the people are behind it, but
Bilal's already made $1 million. He's like, yeah, I read the thread for 5 minutes. It felt right. Anyways, guys, nice recording this, but I'm retiring.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, anything else, Jack, on LooksRare before we close out?
Don't think so.
Great episode, guys. That was fantastic.
Love it. All right, boys. I think that was it. I think we hit hour 15 at least, so I think we can call it here. Anyway, thanks again for being here. This was a heavy edge of the internet, crypto, Web3, whatever you want to call it nowadays episode. So if you like that, let us know. You can join us in the Telegram group. If you're new here, there's a link in the description below. You can click that and join the group chat where we've got about 1,200 people that listen to podcasts and people sharing stuff in there. So definitely come into that. And if you're listening on audio only, make sure you go on YouTube and also subscribe because you can watch all of these visually as well. So let us know what you think in the comments on there as always. and we will see you next week on the next one.
Peace. Thanks, guys.